There are promises made in blizzards that change the course of entire lands. This is the story of one such promise, forged not in words, but in the simple act of choosing life over death. December 1883, Arizona Territory. The blizzard came down from the mountains like a living thing, hungry and relentless. Snow that had no business falling in the desert twisted through the air, turning the world into nothing but white chaos and howling wind. Samuel Fletcher pulled his worn coat tighter, one hand gripping the reins of a tired horse, the other holding fast to his daughter. "Daddy, I cannot see any more." 7-year-old Rose pressed against his side, her small voice nearly lost in the storm. Her face was buried in the rough fabric of his coat, seeking warmth that was becoming harder to find. "Hold on, sweetheart, just hold on." Sam was 38 years old, though the desert and loss had aged him beyond his years. 3 winters had passed since Margaret died, taking their son with her to whatever lay beyond. Now there was only Rose. Only this small girl who trusted him completely, who believed her father could lead them home through anything. The horse stopped. Not a gradual halt, but a sudden refusal to move forward. Sam peered ahead, squinting against the snow that stung his eyes. At first he saw nothing. Just the endless white, the dark shapes of rocks and brush barely visible through the storm. Then he saw her, a figure in the snow, dark hair spread across white ground like spilled ink, bronze skin pale with cold, and around her neck a rope, half broken, still tight enough to show what had been intended. His pulse quickened instinct, overriding caution. He had seen death before. Had walked past it more than once in his younger days when walking past was easier than getting involved. But something in him had changed when Margaret died, something that made him incapable of leaving another soul to the mercy of cold and wind. He dismounted, his boots sinking into snow that should not exist in this land of red earth and burning sun. "Stay with the horse, Rose." "But, Daddy—" "Stay." His voice was firm but not harsh. Rose knew that tone. She wrapped her small arms around the horse's neck and watched as her father knelt in the snow beside the woman. Sam's hands were rough from years of forge work, scarred from hot metal and hard labor. Those same hands now moved with surprising gentleness as he pressed 2 fingers against the woman's neck, just below where the rope had bitten deep. A pulse, faint, irregular, but there. She is still breathing. He spoke to no one in particular, or perhaps to God if God was listening in this God-forsaken storm. His knife came out old but sharp. The rope parted with 3 quick strokes. The woman did not move, did not make a sound, but that faint pulse continued its stubborn rhythm. Sam had been a blacksmith before becoming a rancher. Before that he had been a soldier, though those days felt like another man's life now. He knew how to lift heavy things, how to carry weight. He gathered the woman in his arms, shocked at how light she was, despite the strength he could see in her shoulders, the work-worn quality of her hands. She wore a buckskin dress beautifully made with intricate beadwork that spoke of skill and care. On her wrist, catching what little light filtered through the storm, was a bracelet, silver engraved with the image of an eagle in flight. "Rose, make room." His daughter scrambled back as Sam lifted the woman onto the horse. He pulled off his own coat, the last piece of decent warmth he had, and wrapped it around her. Then he took the reins and began walking, leading the horse through the blinding snow. Rose rode behind the unconscious woman, her small hands holding the stranger steady. "Daddy, is she Apache?" The child's voice held no fear, only curiosity. Sam had raised her to see people, not categories, to understand that good and evil had nothing to do with the color of a person's skin. "Yes." "Is she going to die?" The question was direct, as children's questions often are. Sam kept walking, his face turned against the wind. "Not if I can help it." "Why was she hanging from a tree?" "I do not know, sweetheart. But tonight, she is just someone who needs to live." The cabin appeared through the storm like a blessing. Small, weathered, clinging to the base of a cliff, that provided some shelter from the worst of the wind. Sam had built it himself after Margaret died, when he could no longer bear to live in the house they had shared. It was not much. One room, a stone fireplace, a bed, a table, 2 chairs, but it was tight and dry, and right now that was everything. He carried the woman inside while Rose led the horse to the lean-to shelter beside the cabin. The girl was capable beyond her years. Loss had taught her that. Sam laid the woman on his bed, the only bed, and immediately set about building a fire. His hands moved with the automatic precision of long practice, kindling then larger pieces, nursing the flames until heat began to push back the cold that had invaded every corner of the room. Rose came in stamping snow from her boots. "The horse is settled. I gave him extra feed." "Good girl." Sam was already heating water, pulling out clean cloth. He had some skill with wounds from his army days, though he had tried to forget most of what he learned in that time. The woman's skin was cold as stone. He worked to warm her slowly, knowing that too much heat too fast could be as dangerous as the cold itself. He rubbed her hands gently with cloth dipped in warm water, wrapped her in blankets, built the fire higher. Rose sat near the stove shivering despite the growing warmth. She watched her father with wide eyes. "Is she going to die, Daddy?" It was the second time she had asked. Sam paused in his work, looking at his daughter. "Not yet. If we keep the fire going, she will pull through." The night stretched long. Father and daughter took turns watching over the stranger. Outside, the wind howled like a creature denied its prey. Inside, the fire crackled and hissed, pushing warmth into every corner of the small cabin. Sam noticed things as he worked. The scars on the woman's shoulders, old marks from hard labor or punishment, he could not tell which. The calluses on her hands, the kind that came from years of skilled work. The strength in her frame even weakened as she was. This was not someone accustomed to being helpless. And there was something else. On her shoulder, partially hidden by her hair, was another scar. Different from the others, this one looked like claw marks, 4 parallel lines. They were old, healed long ago, but distinctive. Around midnight, the woman stirred. Sam leaned forward, his hands gentle on her shoulders as he eased her back down. "Do not be afraid. You are safe now." Her eyes opened, dark, deep, filled with confusion and pain and something else. Something fierce that had not been extinguished by whatever had put that rope around her neck. She tried to speak, but only a rasping sound came out. Sam reached for the cup of water he had been keeping warm by the fire. "Drink, slow." He supported her head, helping her take small sips. She drank like someone who had been thirsty for a very long time. When she finished, she looked at him with those dark eyes and spoke a single word in a language he did not know. Then, seeing his incomprehension, she tried again. "Water." Her voice was rough, damaged by the rope, but there was strength beneath the weakness. Sam gave her more water, watching as color slowly returned to her face. She was younger than he had first thought. Perhaps 33 or 34. Beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with softness and everything to do with strength. Rose crept closer, her natural curiosity overcoming her shyness. The woman's eyes moved to the child. Something in her expression softened. "Thank you." The words came in English, accented but clear. Then she added something else in her own language. Sam did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. Gratitude, deep and sincere. "You are safe now," he repeated. It seemed important to say it again to make sure she understood. The woman tried to sit up. Sam helped her, propping her against the rough wall behind the bed. She looked around the cabin, taking in the poverty of it, the simplicity. Her eyes returned to Sam. "Who are you?" "Samuel Fletcher. Most folks call me Sam. This is my daughter Rose." Rose gave a small wave. The woman's lips curved in what might have been a smile if smiling did not clearly hurt. "I am—" She paused as if deciding what to say. "I am Aita." "Well, Aita, you are welcome to stay until you are strong enough to travel." Sam moved to the fireplace, ladling soup from the pot that hung there. It was simple fair corn and dried meat, but it was hot and nourishing. He brought it to her, watching as she took the bowl with trembling hands. She ate slowly, carefully, as if her throat pained her. It probably did. The marks from the rope were dark against her skin. Sam did not ask questions, did not demand to know who had done this to her or why. Every person had a past that needed burying. He understood that better than most. Rose, however, had no such reservations. "Miss Aita, why do you have an eagle bracelet?" The child pointed to the silver band on the woman's wrist. Aita looked down at it, her fingers touching the engraved metal. "Because I flew from the sky." Her voice was dry, almost amused, despite the pain. Sam found himself smiling slightly. "In the most painful way possible," he added. Aita met his eyes. For a moment there was understanding between them. She nodded slowly. "But I landed in the right place." That night, after Aita had fallen into an exhausted sleep and Rose was curled up in her blankets near the fire, Sam sat in his chair and stared into the flames. He thought about the choices that bring a person to a particular moment. The way a storm can change everything. The way saying yes to helping a stranger can alter the direction of an entire life. He did not know it yet, but he had just made the most important decision of his life. Not the decision to save Aita. That had been instinct, the automatic response of a decent man to someone in need. No, the important decision was the one he made sitting there by the fire, the decision to not ask questions, to simply accept what came next, to trust in the possibility that sometimes the right thing to do is the simplest thing. Help when help is needed, nothing more complicated than that. Outside, the storm began to quiet. By morning it would be gone, leaving behind a world transformed by snow. Inside, 3 people slept. A man who had lost everything, a child who was learning to hope again, and a woman who had escaped death by the narrowest of margins. None of them knew what was coming. But in that small cabin, something new had begun. Not love, not yet. Something simpler and perhaps more powerful, the first stirrings of trust. The next 3 days passed in a rhythm as old as caring for the sick. Sam tended to Aita's injuries with the careful attention he had once given to shaping metal in his forge. Rose brought her water, chattered to her about anything and everything, filled the cabin with the sound of a child's voice. And Aita slowly, steadily began to heal. On the second day, Aita was strong enough to sit up on her own. Sam was working on repairing a wagon wheel that had cracked in the cold. He looked up to find her watching him, her dark eyes curious. "You know your way around wood and metal." "I was a blacksmith before I turned to ranching." "A blacksmith?" She seemed to consider this. "My father always said a man who could work with his hands was worth 10 men who only worked with their words." Sam smiled, running his hand over the wood, checking for weaknesses. "Your father sounds like a wise man." He was. The past tense hung in the air between them. Sam did not ask. Aita seemed to appreciate his restraint. "Let me help." She started to rise, but Sam held up a hand. "You are still healing." "I am strong enough to hold a piece of wood steady." There was steel in her voice, a quiet determination that Sam recognized. He had seen it in the mirror often enough. The refusal to be helpless. The need to be useful. "All right, then." Aita came to where he was working, moving carefully but steadily. She knelt beside the wheel, her hands finding the right places to hold without being told. "My father taught me this. Apache women must be able to do everything. The men go hunting. We do everything else." Sam fit the new piece of wood into place, working it carefully into position. Sounds reasonable? They worked in companionable silence. Rose, watching from her spot by the fire, smiled. She liked seeing her father work with someone. It reminded her of the stories he told about her mother, how Margaret used to help him in the smithy. That evening, as they shared a simple meal of bread and beans, Aita taught Rose her first words in Apache. The child was a quick study, repeating the sounds with careful precision. "What does that mean?" Rose asked after learning a particularly long phrase. It means friend of my heart, Aita replied. Rose beamed. Can I call you that? Only if I can call you the same. Sam watched this exchange, something warm settling in his chest. It had been 3 years since Margaret died. 3 years of just him and Rose struggling to build a life from the ashes of grief. He had forgotten what it felt like to have someone else in the house. Someone whose presence made the space feel fuller, warmer, more alive. On the 3rd night after Rose had fallen asleep, Sam and Aita sat by the fire. She was strong enough now to move around the cabin without difficulty, strong enough to leave if she chose to. Thank you, she said quietly, for not asking questions. Sam poked at the fire, sending sparks spiraling up the chimney. Every person has a past that needs burying. I learned that the hard way. You lost your wife. It was not a question. Sam nodded. 3 years ago, fever took her and our son both. Rose is all I have left. I understand loss. Aita's voice was soft. My father died in the wars. My husband in a different battle. Sam looked at her surprised. He had not known she had been married. I am sorry. Do not be. We all carry grief. The question is what we do with it. She stared into the fire, her face thoughtful. I was not running from enemies when you found me. I was running from family. Sam waited. If she wanted to explain, she would. They thought I was betraying our people by wanting peace, by refusing to choose violence. She touched the rope marks on her neck. They tried to solve the problem. Your own family tried to kill you, my uncle, and others who agreed with him. They believe the only way forward is war. I believe there is another path. Sam considered this. He thought about his own years in the army, the things he had seen and done in the name of duty and country, the way violence bred more violence until no one could remember why the fighting had started. I think you might be right, he said finally. They sat in silence for a while longer. Then Aita spoke again. You did not ask who I was. You simply saw someone dying and decided to help. That is what decent people do. Not always, not usually. She turned to look at him directly. Samuel Fletcher, you are either a very good man or a very foolish one. Sam smiled, a rare expression that transformed his weathered face. Maybe both. On the 4th morning the sky was clear. The snow had melted in the sudden warmth that came after the storm, leaving the desert, looking scrubbed clean. Aita stood in the doorway of the cabin looking out at the transformed landscape. I must go. Sam, preparing breakfast, nodded. He had known this was coming. I will pack you some food. Sam? She turned to face him. I need to tell you something. I am not just a woman running from family trouble. He looked at her, waiting. My name is Aita Redstone. I own Ash Mesa, 50,000 acres of land between here and the Verde Valley. Sam's hand stilled on the bread he was slicing. 50,000 acres, that was not a ranch. That was an empire. Then why? Because someone wants that land very badly. Badly enough to pay my uncle to remove me from the equation. She walked back into the cabin, moving with purpose now. From somewhere in her dress, she produced a small leather pouch. She opened it, revealing gold coins, more gold than Sam had seen in his entire life. I want to hire you, Samuel Fletcher, $150 a month, a house for you and Rose, land of your own for livestock. In return, you help me manage the ranch. Sam stared at her, then at the gold, then back at her. Why me? You do not know me. I know you saved my life without asking who I was or what I could give you in return. I know you treated me with respect and kindness. I know your daughter is being raised to see people, not categories. She met his eyes. That is all I need to know. Aita, I am just a poor blacksmith trying to keep his daughter fed. You are honest. That is worth more than gold. Rose, who had been pretending to sleep, sat up suddenly. Daddy, can we have a real home? Sam looked at his daughter, at the hope shining in her young eyes. He thought about the cabin barely big enough for 2 people, the struggle to make ends meet, the worry that someday he might not be able to provide for her. Then he looked at Aita, standing straight and strong, despite everything she had been through. There was something about her, something that made him want to believe in new beginnings. "When do I start?" Aita smiled a real smile this time, full and genuine. "When the snow melts and the road clears, 3 weeks, my people will come for you." She crossed to where her belongings lay, things Sam had carefully dried and folded. From among them she took the silver eagle bracelet and placed it on the table. "Keep this. When my riders come, they will ask for it. Give it to them, and they will know I sent them. This looks valuable." "It is, but I owe you my life. I think we can call it even." Sam picked up the bracelet, feeling the weight of it, the craftsmanship. "I will keep it safe." "I know you will." Aita looked around the cabin one more time, her gaze lingering on Rose. "Thank you, little one, for being my friend." Rose ran to her, wrapping her arms around Aita's waist. "Will you come back?" "When the eagles return to the mesa." Aita promised, holding the child close. Then she was gone, walking out into the clear morning with the same strength and determination Sam had seen in her from the first. He and Rose stood in the doorway, watching her figure grow smaller against the vast landscape. "Daddy, is she really going to send for us?" Sam looked down at his daughter, then back at the horizon where Aita had disappeared. "I believe she is, sweetheart. I believe she is." He hung the eagle bracelet by the door where the morning light caught it and made it shine. Every day for the next 3 weeks, Rose would touch it as she passed a talisman of hope and new possibilities. Sam returned to his work, but everything felt different now. The cabin seemed smaller, the horizon closer. He found himself thinking about Ash Mesa, about 50,000 acres of land, about a woman strong enough to survive her own family's betrayal and still choose trust. 3 weeks. The promise hung in the air like the echo of that blizzard, like the memory of a woman who flew from the sky and landed in exactly the right place. Neither Sam nor Rose knew what was truly waiting at Ash Mesa. They did not know about the enemies gathering there, about the threats that would soon emerge. They did not know that the simple act of saving one life had set in motion events that would reshape not just their lives, but the lives of hundreds of others. All they knew was hope. And sometimes hope is enough to begin. 3 weeks passed like water through fingers. Sam found himself counting days, watching the road, wondering if the promise made in a snowstorm would prove real. Rose asked about the Eagle Woman every morning. Every evening Sam touched the silver bracelet hanging by the door and tried to believe. On the 21st day they came. Sam was working in his small forge heating metal for a new hinge when he heard the sound. Not the usual silence of the desert, but something rhythmic, purposeful. He stepped outside, shading his eyes against the afternoon sun. 5 riders approached from the east, moving in formation. Even at a distance, Sam could see they were Apache. They rode with the easy grace of people born to horseback, their dark hair caught by the wind. Rose ran to her father's side, her hand finding his. "Is it them, Daddy?" "I think so, sweetheart." The riders drew closer. The man in front was perhaps 40 years old, broad-shouldered and strong, with a face that had seen both war and peace. He raised his hand in greeting as he approached a gesture that was neither threatening nor entirely friendly. Cautious, watchful. Sam stepped forward, keeping Rose slightly behind him. Old instincts died hard. The lead rider dismounted with fluid grace. Up close, Sam could see the intelligence in his eyes, the way he assessed everything with a warrior's awareness. Samuel Fletcher. The English was good, barely accented. Sam nodded. I am Kitchi. Aita Redstone sent me." The man's gaze moved to the door, to the silver bracelet hanging there. Something in his expression eased slightly. "She said you would have something for me." Sam reached for the bracelet, feeling its familiar weight one last time before handing it to Kitchi. The Apache warrior took it, examined it closely, then nodded with what might have been approval. "She also said you were a man who keeps his word. Are you ready to come to Ash Mesa?" Sam looked at the cabin behind him, at the forge that had been his life for 3 years. Everything he and Rose owned could fit in 2 packs. It would take less than an hour to be ready. "Give us time to gather our things." "We will wait." Kitchi turned to the other riders, speaking rapidly in Apache. They dismounted, tending to their horses with practiced efficiency. One of them, a younger man, noticed Rose peeking out from behind her father and smiled. It was a genuine smile, warm and kind. Rose smiled back, some of her nervousness fading. An hour later, Sam and Rose sat atop the old horse that had carried them through the blizzard. Their belongings were tied behind them, everything they owned in the world. Sam took one last look at the cabin, at the life he was leaving behind. "No regrets, Daddy." Rose's voice was soft, uncertain. "None, sweetheart. We are going towards something better." They rode east, following Kitchi and his men. The land gradually changed as they traveled, becoming greener, more lush. Water flowed here in ways it did not near Sam's old cabin. Life thrived in this valley in a way he had almost forgotten was possible. "Mr. Kitchi," Rose called out after they had been riding for an hour, "are you an eagle?" The Apache warrior looked back at her, his stern expression softening slightly. "No, little one, I am a wolf." "A nice wolf." Now Kitchi smiled, a rare expression that transformed his weathered face. "Yes, a nice wolf." Rose laughed, delighted. Sam found himself relaxing slightly. These men could have been hostile, could have resented his presence on their land. Instead, they treated him with cautious respect, waiting to see what kind of man he proved to be. As they rode, Kitchi spoke of Ash Mesa, how Aita's grandfather, Miguel Redstone, had been a Mexican merchant who married an Apache woman, how their daughter had married an Apache chief, how the land had passed to Aita when old Miguel died 2 years ago. "She is the only one both peoples trust," Kitchi said. "Apache because of her father, Mexican and white because of her grandfather's legal claim to the land." "That is a difficult position to hold," Sam observed. "Yes, some want her to choose a side. She refuses, says there should not be sides." Kitchi glanced back at him. "That is why her uncle tried to kill her. He believes only in war. She believes in something else." "What happened to her uncle?" "He lives, for now. But his power is broken. Those who followed him have scattered." They rode in silence for a while. Then Kitchi spoke again, his voice lower. "You saved her life without knowing who she was. That matters. She told me you did not ask questions, did not demand explanations, just helped because help was needed. Any decent person would have done the same." "No," Kitchi's voice was firm. "Most would have ridden past, especially if they knew she was Apache. You did not. Remember that in the days ahead, when things become difficult." Sam wanted to ask what he meant by that, but they crested a hill at that moment, and the words died in his throat. Before them, rising from the desert floor like a mirage made solid, stood 3 enormous saguaro cacti. They were ancient, perhaps 200 years old, towering over the landscape like sentinels. And beyond them, spread across the valley floor, was Ash Mesa. It was not a ranch. It was a settlement, a community. Sam counted 12 wooden houses, 8 hide lodges, 3 large corrals filled with horses. Cattle grazed in fenced pastures. A deep well stood in the center with people drawing water. Smoke rose from cook fires. Children played. Dogs barked. The sounds of life and work filled the air. Rose gasped. "Daddy, it is like a castle?" Kitchi chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. "Aita would say it is just a home. But yes, little one, it is impressive." They rode down into the valley. People stopped their work to watch. Sam felt the weight of their stares, the mixture of curiosity and caution. He kept his eyes forward, his posture relaxed but alert. Rose waved at the children, her friendly nature overcoming her shyness. In the center of the settlement near the well, a figure waited. Aita sat atop a black horse, her posture straight and commanding. She wore a buckskin dress decorated with silver beadwork, her dark hair braided with leather ties. The bruises on her neck had faded. The weakness was gone. This was not the woman Sam had pulled from the snow. This was a leader, a landowner, someone accustomed to authority. For a moment Sam felt uncertain. Had he made a mistake? Was he out of his depth here? Then Aita smiled, and it was the same smile she had given Rose in the cabin, warm, genuine, real. "You came. I was not entirely sure you would." Sam dismounted, helping Rose down. "You made a promise, so did I. We keep our promises." "So I see." Aita slid from her horse with practiced grace. She approached them, her eyes moving between Sam and Rose. "Welcome to Ash Mesa. This is your home now." She knelt, so she was at eye level with Rose. "Hello, little friend. Did you have a good journey?" "Yes, Miss Aita." Rose smiled shyly. "Mr. Kitchie said he is a nice wolf." Aita laughed a sound like music in the dry air. "He is indeed. The nicest wolf I know." She stood meeting Sam's eyes. "Come, let me show you everything." They walked through the settlement, Aita explaining as they went. The houses were for families with children, the lodges for single men and women. The corrals held nearly 200 horses, a fortune in themselves. The cattle numbered over 100, sleek and healthy from good grazing. "How many people live here?" Sam asked, trying to take it all in. 52 as of this morning. 40 Apache, 7 Mexican, 5 white, counting you and Rose. She led them to one of the wooden houses, smaller than some, but well-built and solid. "This is yours." Sam stepped inside and stopped. 2 rooms, real beds with rope frames, a table and chairs, a fireplace already laid with wood, windows with actual glass. It was more than he had dared hope for. Rose ran from room to room, her delighted laughter echoing off the walls. "Daddy, look, I have my own room." "I see, sweetheart." Sam turned to Aita, words failing him. "This is—" "You did not have to." "Yes, I did. You saved my life. This is the least I can do." "Aita, I am just a blacksmith. I do not know if I can—" She held up a hand, stopping him. "Come with me. There is something you need to see." She led him to the largest building in the settlement, a structure that served as both office and meeting hall. Inside, maps covered the walls. Documents lay organized on a large table. On one wall hung a portrait of an older man, distinguished and kind-faced. "My grandfather, Miguel Redstone." Aita moved to the table, gesturing to the papers there. "These are the legal documents, land grants, bills of sale, everything proving I own this land legally under Mexican and American law, both." She picked up one document, handling it with reverence. "My grandfather bought this land in 1860. He married my grandmother, a White Mountain Apache woman named Ixchel. Their daughter, my mother, married my father, who became a chief. When my grandfather died 2 years ago, the land came to me." Sam studied the documents, the official seals, the signatures. "This is valuable, very valuable. 50,000 acres of the best grazing land in the territory, good water, shelter, everything needed for prosperity." Aita set the document down carefully. "And someone wants it very badly." "Who?" "A man named Vernon Drake, a merchant from Prescott. He has made 5 offers to buy. Each time I refused. He knows about the silver." "Silver?" Aita moved to another part of the room, to what looked like a simple painting of the 3 sentinel cacti. She turned it around, revealing a map drawn on the back. "My grandfather found a silver deposit under the mesa, a large one. He never exploited it. He said the land was worth more than the metal, that taking the silver would destroy what made this place special." She traced her finger along the map. "Drake knows about it. I do not know how, but he knows. And he wants it." Sam looked at the map, at the careful markings showing where the silver lay hidden beneath the earth. "You think he is the one who paid my uncle to kill me?" "Yes. I have no proof, but yes." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "I need you to understand what you are walking into, Sam. This is not just a job managing a ranch. This is standing against powerful people who want this land. People who have already tried to kill me once. Sam thought about this. Thought about Rose, about keeping her safe. Thought about running, about finding some other place to build a quiet life. Then he thought about the woman standing before him, about her refusal to give up despite being betrayed by her own blood, about her vision of a place where different peoples could live together in peace. "What do you need me to do?" Relief flickered across Aita's face. "Help me manage the ranch. You know horses and cattle. You know how to work with metal, which we need. But more than that," she paused, choosing her words carefully. "I need someone I can trust absolutely. Someone who is here because it is right, not because of money or power or tribal loyalty. I am here because you gave Rose and me a chance at something better. Then we understand each other." That evening the community gathered for a meal. Long tables had been set up near the well. Roasted meat, corn cakes, beans, bread. The smell was intoxicating after weeks of Sam's simple cooking. People introduced themselves. Sam tried to remember names, faces. Maria, who managed the garden. Thomas, who oversaw the horses. Chenoa, an elderly Apache woman with wise eyes and a quiet smile, who served as healer and advisor. Rose found herself surrounded by children, all eager to meet the new girl. She was shy at first, but their friendliness broke through her reserve. Soon she was laughing, trying to learn their names in both English and Apache. An old woman approached Sam as he watched his daughter play. It was Chenoa, moving with the careful grace of advanced age. "Your daughter brings joy," she said in English that carried the rhythm of another language beneath it. "She does. It is good to see her happy." Chenoa studied him with eyes that seemed to see more than most. "You have known loss." It was not a question. Sam nodded. "My wife, my son, 3 years ago. Aida has also known loss. Her husband died in battle, her parents, many friends." The old woman's gaze moved to where Aida stood talking with Kichi. "Two people who understand grief can build something strong together." Sam felt heat rise in his face. "I am just here to work, grandmother." Chenoa smiled a knowing expression that made Sam feel like a boy again. "Of course, just to work." She patted his arm and moved away, leaving Sam to wonder exactly what he had gotten himself into. Later, after Rose had fallen asleep in her new room, Sam stood outside their house looking up at the stars. The night sky in this valley seemed different somehow. Clearer, closer. Cannot sleep. He turned to find Aida approaching, a shawl wrapped around her shoulders against the desert night's chill. "Too much to take in, I think." She came to stand beside him, looking up at the same stars. "I know the feeling. When I first came back here after my grandfather died, I stood in this exact spot and wondered if I could do it, if I could make his dream real." What was his dream? A place where different peoples could live together without fear, where Apache and Mexican and white could be neighbors instead of enemies, where children like Rose could grow up not knowing hate. She turned to look at him. "Do you think that is possible?" Sam thought about the meal they had just shared, about the mixture of languages and laughter, about Rose playing with children of different backgrounds without seeing those differences as barriers. "I think if anywhere can do it, this place can. So, I hope you are right." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Aida spoke again. "There is something you should know. Not everyone here welcomes your presence. Some see you as a threat, a white man in a position of authority on Apache land. I understand. Give them time. Show them who you are through your actions, not your words. They will come around. And if they do not, then we deal with it together." The word "together" seemed to hang in the air between them. Sam found himself very aware of how close she was standing, of the way the moonlight caught in her dark hair. "I should get some sleep," he said, his voice rougher than intended. "Long day tomorrow." "Yes, I will show you the land in the morning, all 50,000 acres." She smiled slightly. "It may take a few days." After she left, Sam returned to the house. He checked on Rose, who was sleeping peacefully, a smile on her young face even in dreams. Then he stood in his own room, looking at the bed, the chest for his belongings, the window that looked out over the settlement. 3 weeks ago, he had been a poor blacksmith barely keeping his daughter fed. Now he was the right hand to a woman who owned an empire in the desert. A woman who had been betrayed by family but still chose to trust a stranger. Sam Fletcher had fought in wars, had lost everything that mattered to him, had learned that the world was often cruel and unfair. But standing in that room, looking out at the fires of Ash Mesa flickering in the night, he felt something he had not felt in 3 long years. Hope. Whatever came next, whatever challenges awaited, he would face them. For Rose, for the promise he had made, and maybe, just maybe, for the fierce woman with dark eyes who had flown from the sky and landed in exactly the right place. The bracelet hung by his door, now catching the moonlight. A silver eagle in flight. Sam touched it once before closing his eyes to sleep, wondering what tomorrow would bring. The sun rose over Ash Mesa like a promise, painting the desert in shades of gold and amber. Sam woke to unfamiliar sounds, voices calling in Apache, the rhythmic thud of an axe splitting wood, horses nickering in the corrals, the smell of coffee and cooking fires. For a moment he lay still, remembering where he was. Then he rose, dressed quickly, and stepped outside to find his daughter already awake and exploring. Rose stood near the well, watching a young Apache woman draw water. The woman, perhaps 20 years old, showed Rose how to work the rope and pulley, how to bring up the bucket without spilling. Rose laughed with delight when she managed it herself. She learns quickly. Sam turned to find Kitchi standing nearby, arms crossed, watching the scene with approval. She has always been curious about everything. Curiosity is good. Curiosity builds bridges. The Apache warrior gestured toward the eastern pastures. Aida asked me to show you the land this morning. She is dealing with a matter in the northern section. She will join us later. They spent the morning on horseback, Kitchi pointing out landmarks, explaining the layout of the ranch. The land was more diverse than Sam had imagined. Rich grasslands for cattle, rocky hillsides where horses could run, stands of trees near streams, and everywhere evidence of careful management. Fences in good repair, water sources protected, nothing wasted or neglected. Aida runs this place well, Sam observed as they paused on a ridge overlooking the valley. Her grandfather taught her. He understood land, how to use it without destroying it, how to take only what is needed and leave the rest for tomorrow. Kitchi's voice carried respect, even reverence. Too many whites do not understand this. They see land as something to consume, to use up and abandon. Not all whites. Kitchi looked at him steadily. No, not all. We will see which kind you are. It was a challenge, but a fair one. Sam nodded his acceptance. They returned to the settlement at midday to find activity at a fever pitch. Something had happened. Sam saw it immediately in the way people moved with purpose, in the tight expressions on their faces. Aida stood near the main building, talking urgently with 3 men. She looked up as Sam and Kitchi approached her, face tight, with controlled anger. What happened? Kitchi asked in English for Sam's benefit. The fence on the western boundary was cut last night. 20 horses got out. We found most of them, but 3 are still missing. She turned to Sam. Welcome to Ash Mesa. This is what we deal with. Who cut it? That is the question, is it not? Aida's jaw tightened. It could be raiders, could be Drake's men testing our defenses, could be someone in the settlement who wants to make trouble. Sam thought about this. A fence did not cut itself. Someone had deliberately sabotaged the ranch, timing it for a night when discovery would be delayed. Show me the fence. They rode west, Aida leading the way with Sam and Kitchi following. Rose stayed behind with Chenoa, who had promised to teach her how to make corn cakes. The damaged fence was easy to spot. 3 rails had been cleanly cut, not broken by animals or weather. The cuts were deliberate, made with a sharp blade. Professional work, not vandalism. Sam dismounted, examining the ground. He had learned tracking in the Army skills he had hoped never to use again. But they came back easily, the ability to read a story in disturbed earth and bent grass. 2 men, both wearing boots. They came from the north, did the work left, heading south. He pointed to a spot where one man had waited while the other cut. One was lookout, the other did the cutting. They were here maybe 20 minutes. Aida watched him work, something like approval in her eyes. You have done this before. Long time ago. Different life. He did not elaborate, and she did not push. They had an understanding about pasts that needed burying. Can you track them? Sam studied the trail heading south. It was several hours old but still readable. For a while. But tracking 2 men across open country takes time. By now they could be anywhere. Then we focus on prevention. Aida turned to Kitchi. Double the night watch. 2 men on each boundary. If anyone approaches, I want to know immediately. It will stretch our people thin. I know, but we cannot afford another incident. They repaired the fence with wood brought from the settlement. Sam worked alongside the Apache ranch hands, demonstrating his skill with tools, his willingness to do hard labor. He felt their eyes on him, assessing, judging. He kept his head down and worked. That evening, as the sun set in brilliant colors across the desert sky, Sam found himself sitting with several of the ranch hands around a fire. They spoke in Apache, sometimes translating for his benefit, sometimes not. He did not mind. He was content to listen, to learn the rhythms of their language, to begin understanding the people he would be working with. One of them, a young man named Takota, finally addressed him directly. You were a soldier. It was not a question. Sam nodded. Long time ago. You fought against the Apache. Sam met the young man's eyes steadily. I fought where I was ordered to fight. I am not proud of everything I did in those days, but you did it. Yes. The honesty seemed to surprise Takota. He had expected excuses, justifications. Instead, Sam offered only truth. Another man, older with a scar across his cheek, spoke up. Why are you here? Because Aida offered me work. Because I have a daughter who needs a home. Because this seems like a good place to build a life. Not because you want to help the Apache. Sam considered this carefully. I want to help make this place work, whatever that takes. If that means helping Apache, helping whites, helping anyone who lives here and wants peace, then yes. That is why I am here. The scarred man grunted something that might have been approval. Kitchi, who had been sitting quietly, finally spoke. Samuel Fletcher saved Aida's life without knowing who she was. He did not ask what she could do for him. He just helped because help was needed. That matters. The conversation shifted then, moving to other topics. But Sam felt a subtle change in the way the men looked at him. Not acceptance, not yet, but the beginning of something, a willingness to see what he would prove himself to be. Later, walking back to his house, Sam found Aida waiting on his porch. She sat on the steps looking up at the stars, her expression peaceful in a way he had rarely seen. You did well today, she said without preamble. I told the truth. Seemed like the right approach. It was. These men respect honesty more than pretty words. She patted the step beside her. Sit. Tell me about your daughter. Sam settled next to her, careful to maintain a respectful distance. What do you want to know? Everything. What she likes. What she fears. What makes her laugh. So he told her. About Rose's love of animals. Her quick mind that absorbed information like sand absorbs water. Her nightmares sometimes about the fever that took her mother and brother. Her resilience, her ability to find joy even in hardship. Aida listened with complete attention, the kind of listening that made a person feel truly heard. She is special, Aida said when he finished. Children who survive loss often are. They understand things other children do not. You understand that too. Yes, I was 12 when I watched my mother die, 15 when my father fell in battle, 18 when my husband was killed. Loss teaches lessons whether we want to learn them or not. They sat in comfortable silence, watching fires dim across the valley. Fires were banked. Children were called inside. The watch changed, new guards taking up positions around the perimeter. "Sam, I need to tell you something." The seriousness in her voice made him turn to look at her fully. "Tomorrow men are coming from Prescott. Vernon Drake is sending his representative to make another offer for the land. I will refuse as I have before, but I wanted you to know. You will see the kind of pressure we face." "Do you want me there?" "Yes. I want Drake to see that I am not alone, that I have capable people supporting me. Then I will be there." She reached out her hand, briefly touching his arm. The contact was light, fleeting, but it sent warmth through him. "Thank you for everything, for being here, for giving this place a chance. Thank you for giving Rose and me a home." After she left, Sam sat on the porch for a long time. Inside, Rose slept peacefully in her own room in a real bed, safe and warm. The settlement around him hummed with quiet life. Somewhere a woman sang softly in Apache. A baby cried briefly, then settled. This could work, Sam thought. This fragile, impossible dream of different peoples living together. It could actually work. But first, they would have to survive Vernon Drake. The next morning dawned clear and hot. Sam dressed in his best clothes, which were not much. A clean shirt, trousers without patches, boots he had oiled until they almost looked new. He wanted to present himself well to show he was not just a hired hand, but someone with authority. Aida met him outside the main building. She wore a dress that was a stunning blend of cultures. Apache buckskin beautifully worked with beadwork cut in a style that would not look entirely out of place in a Prescott parlor. Her hair was braided and wrapped with silver ornaments. She looked like what she was, a woman who belonged to both worlds, and neither who had carved out her own place between them. "You look ready for battle," Sam observed. "This is battle, just with words instead of weapons." She straightened his collar, a gesture that felt oddly intimate. "You look good, professional. That matters." They did not have to wait long. At mid-morning, 3 men rode into the settlement. 2 of them were clearly hired, muscle-hard-faced men who wore their guns like badges of office. But it was the 3rd man who drew the eye. Drake dismounted with the same careful movements, dressed in an expensive suit that must have been sweltering in the Arizona heat. He had the look of a man accustomed to getting his way through a combination of money and intimidation. He dismounted with the careful movements of someone who spent more time at desks than on horseback. His eyes swept the settlement, calculating, assessing. When they landed on Sam standing beside Aida, something flickered in them. Surprise, perhaps. Concern. "Miss Redstone, still playing at rancher, I see." His voice was smooth, cultured, with an edge of condescension that immediately set Sam's teeth on edge. Aida's voice was cold when she replied, "Mr. Drake, I see you are still playing at businessman. How unfortunate for you that I am not playing. This is my land, legally owned and operated." Drake's smile did not reach his eyes. Of course. No one disputes your legal ownership." His gaze flicked to Sam again. "I do not believe we have met. Vernon Drake, merchant and land developer." "Samuel Fletcher, ranch supervisor." Sam kept his voice neutral, but he made sure to emphasize his title. Let Drake understand that Aida had backing, had people loyal to her. "Ranch supervisor," Drake said the words like they tasted sour. "How progressive. Tell me, Mr. Fletcher, how does a white man come to work for an Apache woman on Apache land?" "She offered me a job. I accepted. Simple as that." "Nothing is ever simple out here, Mr. Fletcher. You would do well to remember that." Aida stepped forward, drawing Drake's attention back to her. "You did not ride all the way from Prescott to meet my staff, Mr. Drake. State your business." Drake reached into his coat and pulled out a document. $100,000, cash, for the land and all assets. The offer is good for 30 days. He held the paper out. Aida did not take it. "I have refused 4 previous offers, Mr. Drake. What makes you think the 5th will be different? Because each refusal makes your position more precarious. Accidents happen out here. Fences get cut. Cattle wander off. People get hurt. He let the words hang in the air, their meaning clear. It would be a shame if something happened to this lovely settlement you have built. Sam felt his muscles tense. That was a threat barely veiled. He saw Kitchy standing nearby shift his weight slightly, saw other ranch hands quietly moving closer. Aida's voice was ice. "Are you threatening me, Mr. Drake?" "Merely stating facts, my dear. The frontier is dangerous. So many things can go wrong. Having proper protection, proper resources, that makes all the difference." He smiled, showing too many teeth. $100,000 buys a lot of protection. "Get off my land." Aida's voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. Drake's smile faded. "You are making a mistake, Miss Redstone. A very serious mistake." "The only mistake I see is allowing you onto my property. You have 10 minutes to be beyond my boundary. After that, I will consider you a trespasser." For a moment, Drake's mask slipped. Sam saw real anger there, real hatred. Then the businessman's smile returned colder than before. "Very well. But remember this moment, Miss Redstone. Remember that I offered you a fair price. What comes next is on your head." He turned to leave, then paused, looking back at Sam. "Mr. Fletcher, a word of advice. This land has a way of swallowing up outsiders. White men who take the wrong side tend to disappear. Think carefully about where your loyalties lie." "I already have," Sam said quietly. "I stand with the people who gave me a home." Drake's expression hardened. "Then you are a fool, but at least you will be a well-informed fool when the end comes." He mounted his horse, his men following suit. They rode out of the settlement at a leisurely pace, making it clear they were leaving on their own terms, not because they had been ordered to go. When they were gone, Aida let out a breath she seemed to have been holding. "Well, that went about as expected." "He threatened you openly," Sam said, anger heating his words. "In front of witnesses. Surely the law—" "The law," Aida laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Drake owns half of Prescott, including the mayor and most of the town council. The only law out here is what we make ourselves." Kitchy stepped forward. "We should increase security. He will try something soon." "Agreed. Sam, can you help organize watches? Make sure everyone knows what to look for." "Of course." The rest of the day was spent preparing. Sam worked with Kitchy to establish patrol routes to identify vulnerable points in the ranch's defenses. They had perhaps 40 people who could fight if needed, but many were farmers and ranchers, not warriors. That evening, as Sam walked through the settlement, checking on preparations, he found Rose in Chenoa's lodge. The old woman was teaching her to weave, their heads bent together over a small loom. "Daddy," Rose looked up, her face bright with excitement. "Look what I am making." It was a small basket, the work clumsy but earnest. Sam felt his heart swell with love for this child who found joy in simple things. "It is beautiful, sweetheart." Chenoa smiled, her weathered face creasing with warmth. "She has good hands, patient hands. That is a gift." "Grandmother Chenoa is teaching me words too," Rose continued. "I can say thank you, and water, and friend, and lots of things." "That is wonderful." Later, after he had taken Rose back to their house and tucked her into bed, Sam stood outside again, studying the night sky. The same stars that had looked down on battlefields and graveyards, on Margaret's death and his son's funeral, on a blizzard that had changed everything. He thought about Drake's words, the threat implicit in every syllable, the promise of violence to come. Old instincts stirred, the readiness of a man who had once fought for survival, had killed men in uniform who were trying to kill him. He had thought those days were behind him. But standing there in the desert night, he felt the old readiness settling into his bones, the awareness that violence was coming, whether he wanted it or not. The question was whether he was still capable of meeting it, whether the blacksmith and father could become a fighter again if that was what protecting this place required. He touched the handle of the old army revolver he had kept hidden in his belongings. He had not worn it in 3 years, had hoped never to wear it again, But hope, he was learning, was not always enough. 2 weeks passed in uneasy peace. The nights were tense, with doubled guards reporting every sound, every shadow. But no new attacks came. The fence stayed intact. The horses remained in their corrals. It was the quiet before a storm, and everyone could feel it building. Sam spent his days learning the ranch, working alongside the hands, proving himself through sweat and competence. He repaired equipment, helped with the cattle, taught Rose in the evenings. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the Apache workers began to accept him. Not as one of them, never that, but as someone who belonged at Ash Mesa. Aida worked beside him, often showing him the details of managing such a large operation. They fell into an easy partnership, anticipating each other's needs, developing a shorthand of gestures and brief words. Sam found himself looking forward to their morning rides across the property, to the conversations they had while checking fence lines or counting cattle. Rose thrived. She learned Apache phrases with the quick facility of childhood, made friends with the other children, helped Chenoa with her healing work, showing a gentle touch with the sick and injured. It was on one of these peaceful mornings, riding with Aita along the northern boundary, that everything changed. They had stopped to water the horses at a small spring when Aida suddenly froze her hand, going up in a gesture that meant silence and stillness. Sam went quiet, following her gaze. 3 riders approached from the east, moving fast. As they drew closer, Sam recognized one of them as Luther Kane, one of Drake's men who had accompanied him 2 weeks ago. But these men were not coming for conversation. "Ride!" Aida shouted. They spurred their horses into a gallop, racing back toward the settlement. Behind them, the 3 riders gave chase. Sam heard the crack of a rifle saw dirt kick up near his horse's hooves. They were being shot at. The settlement was still 2 miles away. Too far. Their horses were already tired from the morning's ride. The pursuers were gaining. "There!" Aida pointed to a rocky outcropping ahead. "We can defend there." They reached the rocks and dismounted in a controlled slide, pulling their horses into cover. Sam had his revolver out. Aida had a rifle she kept in her saddle holster. Both took positions behind the boulders. The 3 riders pulled up about 50 yards away, just out of easy pistol range. Luther Kane called out, "Miss Redstone, Mr. Drake wants to talk." "We talked 2 weeks ago," Aida shouted back. "I have nothing more to say. He thought you might be more reasonable after some time to think, and he sent men with rifles to help me think. How thoughtful." Sam could hear the bitter sarcasm in her voice. He kept his eyes on the men, watching for any sudden moves. "Just hear his new offer, 150,000 final price. No, you are being unreasonable, ma'am. Mr. Drake has been very patient. His patience is not my concern. This is my land. It is not for sale." Luther's voice hardened. "Mr. Drake thought you might say that. He asked me to encourage you to reconsider." He gestured to his men. They spread out, beginning to flank the rocks. Sam calculated distances, angles. 3 against 2, and they had rifles while he only had a pistol. "Aida, we need to move," he said quietly, "where they have us pinned." Then from behind the 3 riders came the thunder of hooves. Sam looked up to see Kitchi and 5 Apache warriors riding hard, weapons ready. Luther and his men spun their horses, suddenly caught between 2 forces. For a moment Sam thought there would be a fight. His finger tightened on the trigger, ready. But Luther was not a fool. He assessed the situation, saw the numbers now favored Aida, and made the smart choice. "This is not over, Miss Redstone, mister. Drake will have his answer one way or another." He wheeled his horse and rode off, his men following. They disappeared quickly over a rise, leaving only dust behind. Kitchi rode up to the rocks, his face grim. "We heard shots? Are you hurt?" "No, thanks to you." Aida stood brushing dirt from her dress. "How did you know?" "Rose saw riders from the settlement. She told me. I gathered men and followed." Sam felt a surge of pride in his daughter, mixed with fear at how close this had been. If Rose had not been watching, if Kitchi had been slower, if the men had decided to shoot first and talk later. They rode back to the settlement in formation, alert for another attack. But none came. Drake's men had made their point and withdrawn. That evening, Aita called a council meeting. The main building was packed with everyone who had a stake in Ash Mesa's future. Sam sat near the front with Kitchi and the other senior hands. "We all know what happened today," Aita began without preamble. "Drake is escalating. Words have become threats. Threats have become violence. We need to decide what to do." An older Apache man, one of the ones who had been most suspicious of Sam, stood. "We should fight. Drive Drake and his men off our land. Show them we are not afraid." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd, but Aita shook her head. "Fighting will bring the army. You know this, Tarak. If we start a war even in self-defense, we give them the excuse they want to take our land legally." Tarak, the older man, scowled. "So we do nothing. We let them attack us." "I did not say that. We defend ourselves, but we do it smart. We gather evidence. We get the law on our side." "The law," Tarak spat. "The white man's law? It has never protected us before. Then we make it work this time." Aita's voice was firm. "We have legal ownership. We have witnesses to Drake's threats. We build a case so strong even his bought politicians cannot ignore it." Sam stood, feeling all eyes turned to him. There might be another way. "Someone needs to go to Prescott. Talk to the sheriff directly. Not the mayor Drake owns, but the lawman himself." "And you think he will help an Apache woman against a rich white man?" Tarak's voice dripped with skepticism. "I think if we present him with facts, with proof of attempted murder and intimidation, he will have to act. Sheriff Hayes has a reputation for being fair. You know him." "No, but I can find out about him, and I can go make the case." Aita looked at him, something complicated in her expression. "That could be dangerous. Drake has people in Prescott." "I know, but someone has to try." The council debated for another hour. Finally, they agreed. Sam would go to Prescott with Kitchi. They would bring the evidence of Drake's harassment. They would make a formal complaint. It was not much of a plan, but it was something. Later that night, after Rose was asleep, Sam sat on his porch, sharpening his knife. It was an old habit from his army days, something to do with his hands while his mind worked. Aita found him there. "You do not have to do this, you know, going to Prescott. It is not in your job description." Sam smiled slightly. "I do not think ranch supervisor covers half of what I have done in the last 2 weeks." "No, I suppose not." She sat beside him close enough that he could smell sage and leather. "Thank you for standing with us today, for offering to go tomorrow. This is my home now too, Rose's home. I will not let Drake take that away." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Aita spoke again, her voice softer. "There is something I need to tell you about the silver." Sam looked at her. "I thought your grandfather never minded." "He did not, but he did something else, something I only recently discovered." She pulled a folded paper from her dress. "I found this hidden in his desk. It is a letter to me, written just before he died." She handed it to Sam. By the light of the lantern hanging nearby, he read. The letter was brief. Miguel Redstone had suspected Drake of wanting the land for the silver, had confronted him, had been threatened. The old man had died 3 days after writing the letter, supposedly of a heart attack. "You think Drake killed him," Sam said quietly. "I think it is possible. I think Drake has wanted this land for years, has been planning and scheming, and I think he will not stop until he has it, or we are all dead." Sam folded the letter carefully and handed it back. "Then we give this to Sheriff Hayes. It is evidence of motive." "It proves nothing, just an old man's suspicions." "Maybe. But combined with today's attack, with the fence cutting, with the threats, it starts to paint a picture." Aita looked at him, hope and fear warring in her eyes. "What if it is not enough? What if Hayes is bought too? Then we find another way. We keep fighting. We do not give up." He reached out his hand, covering hers. "You did not give up when your own uncle tried to kill you. You will not give up now." She turned her hand over her fingers, interlacing with his. The touch was warm, solid, real. "I am glad you are here, Sam Fletcher. I am glad to be here." They sat like that for a while, hands clasped, watching the stars wheel overhead. In the morning, Sam would ride to Prescott and try to turn the law against Vernon Drake. It might work. It might not. But tonight, in this moment, with Aita's hand in his and Rose sleeping safely nearby, Sam felt something he had not felt since Margaret died. He felt like he had found where he belonged. The journey to Prescott took most of the next day. Sam and Kitchie rode in silence for long stretches, each man lost in his own thoughts. They reached the town as the sun was setting, painting the wooden buildings in shades of gold and amber. Prescott was a frontier town trying to become civilized. Wooden sidewalks, a hotel with glass windows, a church with a real bell, and underneath the veneer of respectability, the rough edges of a place where fortunes were made and lost on luck and violence. They found the sheriff's office near the center of town. Sheriff William Hayes was a man in his mid-50s, weathered by sun and experience. He looked up from his desk as Sam and Kitchie entered, his eyes sharp and assessing. "Help, you gentlemen." Sam introduced himself, and Kitchie then laid out the situation. The attacks on Ash Mesa, Drake's threats, the letter from Miguel Redstone. He spoke plainly without embellishment, presenting facts and letting them speak for themselves. Hayes listened without interruption, his expression neutral. When Sam finished, the sheriff leaned back in his chair. "That is quite a tale, Mr. Fletcher. It is the truth. I do not doubt you believe it. The question is, can you prove it? We have witnesses to Drake's threats, to the attack this morning. We have the cut fence. We have this letter." Hayes picked up the letter, reading it carefully. "This does not prove Drake killed Miguel Redstone, just that the old man suspected him. But combined with everything else, it shows a pattern of harassment, which is illegal, but it does not give me grounds to arrest Drake." Hayes set the letter down. "I need hard evidence. A witness who will testify to Drake ordering violence, documents showing a conspiracy, something solid." Sam felt frustration building. "So Drake can threaten and attack and you do nothing?" "I did not say that." Hayes stood moving to look out his window at the darkening street. "I said I need evidence to arrest him, but I can do other things. I can make it clear that Ash Mesa is under my protection, that any attacks on the settlement will be investigated fully. That might make Drake think twice. Or it might make him more careful," Kitchie said quietly. It was the first time he had spoken. "True enough, but it is what I can offer right now. You bring me proof of Drake ordering violence, I will arrest him. Until then, I can only warn him off." It was not what Sam had hoped for, but it was something. "Thank you, Sheriff. That is more than we had before." They turned to leave, but Hayes called them back. "One more thing. Be careful. Drake is not stupid. If he thinks you are building a case against him, he might do something desperate. Desperate men are dangerous." "We will remember that." They left the office and walked through the town, looking for a place to spend the night. Sam was lost in thought, considering their options, when a voice called out, "Samuel Fletcher." He turned to see a priest standing in the doorway of the church they were passing. The man was perhaps 68 years old, with white hair and kind eyes. "I am. Do we know each other?" "Not yet. But I knew Aita Redstone's grandfather. Miguel was a good friend. I heard you asking about him at the sheriff's office. I thought perhaps we should talk." The priest introduced himself as Father Miguel O'Malley, named for the same Miguel he had befriended decades ago. He invited them into the church, a simple building with rough benches and a wooden cross. "Miguel came to me a few weeks before he died," Father O'Malley said, sitting in the front pew. "He was worried. Said a man named Drake had been pressuring him to sell Ash Mesa. Said Drake had threatened him." "Do you know anything specific?" "Only that Miguel was scared, really scared. I had known him 30 years, and I had never seen him afraid before." The priest paused. 3 days after our conversation, he was dead. Heart attack, they said, but I always wondered. "Did he give you anything, any proof?" Father O'Malley reached into his robes and pulled out a small envelope. He left this with me, said if anything happened to him, I should give it to Aita when she was ready to fight. Sam took the envelope. Inside was a key and a note. The note was brief. The truth is in the painting. Look on the other side. Sam remembered the painting in Aita's office. The 3 sentinel cacti. She had already found the map of the silver deposit on the back. Father, has anyone else asked about this? About Miguel or the letter? Funny you should mention it. A man came by last week. Said he was a friend of the family. Wanted to know if Miguel had left anything with me. I told him no. What did this man look like? Big, rough, wore his guns like he knew how to use them. Sam and Kitchy exchanged glances. Luther Kane, most likely. Father, we need to get back to Ash Mesa tonight. Can we buy supplies here? The general store will be closing soon, but I can take you there. Tell them I sent you, and they will help. They moved quickly, buying dried food and ammunition. Sam had a bad feeling, an old soldier's instinct that something was wrong. They rode out of Prescott as the last light faded from the sky, pushing their horses hard through the darkness. Kitchy felt it too. Sam could see it in the way the Apache warrior kept scanning the horizon, in the tension in his shoulders. They were still 5 miles from Ash Mesa when they saw the glow. Fire. They pushed the horses to their limit, racing toward the settlement. As they crested the final rise, Sam's worst fears were confirmed. One of the outlying buildings was burning flames, reaching into the night sky. People were running with buckets, fighting the blaze. Others were mounted, riding hard toward the western boundary. Sam and Kitchy galloped into chaos. Aita stood in the center of the settlement, shouting orders, organizing the response. She looked up as they arrived, relief and worry fighting for dominance in her expression. Thank God, we need every hand. Drake's men hit us an hour ago, set fire to the storage barn, took Rose. The world stopped. Sam felt his heart stop beating, his breath stop moving. Everything narrowed to a single point of clarity. She was playing near the barn when they attacked. They grabbed her. Left this. Aita handed him a note. By the light of the burning building, Sam read, "The deed to Ash Mesa in exchange for the girl. Tomorrow, noon, 3 sentinels. Come alone or she dies. Drake." Sam read it 3 times, his mind refusing to process the words. They had taken his daughter, his Rose, the only family he had left in the world. The rage that filled him was cold and terrible. It was the rage of a father whose child had been threatened, the rage of a soldier who had lost too much to lose anything more. "Where is my horse?" Aita grabbed his arm. "Sam, we cannot just give him the land." "I do not care about the land." His voice was harsh, raw. "I care about Rose. He will kill you both. You know that you give him the deed. He has no reason to let either of you live. Then I will die trying to save her." Kitchy stepped between them, his voice calm but firm. "We will not let you die, and we will not let Rose die. But we need a plan. Charging in angry gets everyone killed." Sam wanted to argue, wanted to ride out right now, find Drake's men, tear them apart with his bare hands. But Kitchy was right. Anger would not save Rose. Smart thinking might. "What do you suggest? We prepare, we plan, and tomorrow, when Drake thinks he has won, we take everything from him." Aita nodded. "Gather the council. Everyone who can fight. We end this tomorrow, one way or another." As people rushed to follow orders, Sam stood alone watching the fire burn. Somewhere out there his daughter was frightened, maybe hurt, certainly scared. He thought about the promise he had made her mother, to keep Rose safe, to give her a good life, to protect her from the darkness of this world. He had failed, but tomorrow he would have a chance to make it right, whatever it took, whatever the cost. Vernon Drake had made a fatal mistake. He had taken the one thing in this world that Samuel Fletcher could not afford to lose, and for that Drake would pay in full. The night was endless. Sam sat by the dying fire outside the main building, unable to sleep, unable to think of anything but Rose. Where was she? Was she cold, scared? Had they hurt her? The questions circled like vultures, each one tearing at him. Chenoa found him there near midnight. The old healer moved quietly for someone her age, settling beside him with the patience of someone who understood grief. "Your daughter is strong," she said without preamble. "She is 7 years old. Age is not the measure of strength. I have seen her. She watches. She learns. She does not panic." Chenoa placed a weathered hand on his shoulder. "She will survive this night. The question is whether you will survive it with your mind intact." Sam looked at the old woman, seeing wisdom in her dark eyes. "How do I just sit here knowing she is out there? You sit here because rushing into the dark serves no purpose but to give Drake 2 prisoners instead of 1. You sit here because tomorrow you will need to be smart, not emotional. You sit here because your daughter needs a father who can think, not a madman consumed by rage." The words were harsh but true. Sam forced himself to breathe, to let the cold clarity of logic push back against the hot chaos of fear. "Tell me what to do. First, you remember that you are not alone. Look." Chenoa gestured toward the settlement. All around them, people were preparing. Kitchi was organizing groups, assigning positions. Others were checking weapons, gathering supplies. The entire community was mobilizing. "They do this for you, for Rose, for Aita, for all of us." Chenoa stood slowly. "Now come. You need to eat. You need to rest, even if you cannot sleep. Tomorrow will demand everything from you." The council met before dawn. 30 people crowded into the main building, their faces grim in the lantern light. Aida stood at the head of the table, a map spread before her. "Drake wants me to come alone to 3 sentinels at noon. He expects me to trade the land deed for Rose." Her finger traced a path on the map. "He will have men there, probably Luther Kane and at least 5 others. They will take the deed, kill me, and likely kill Rose to eliminate witnesses." "So we do not give him that chance," Kitchi said. "We surround 3 sentinels. We take positions before dawn. When Drake shows himself, we have him." An Apache woman named Nasha spoke up, her voice sharp with concern. "And if he sees us, if he realizes we are there, he could kill the child immediately." Sam's hands clenched into fists, but he forced himself to stay calm. Aida studied the map. 3 sentinels sit in a small valley, good visibility from the sentinel cacti themselves. But there are rock formations on 3 sides. If we position people carefully, they could stay hidden until the right moment. "And when is the right moment?" Sam asked, his voice rougher than intended. "When Rose is safe. When we can see her, protect her, get her clear of danger." Tarak, the older Apache man who had been skeptical of Sam from the beginning, cleared his throat. "This assumes Drake brings the girl. What if he does not? What if he keeps her elsewhere as insurance?" The question sent a chill through the room. Sam had not considered that possibility. If Drake was smart, he would keep Rose hidden until after he had the deed. But Aida shook her head. "Drake is greedy, not cautious. He wants to gloat, to show me that he has won. He will bring Rose to make sure I give him what he wants." She looked at Sam. "He does not know you well enough to understand that you would burn the deed before letting her die. He thinks everyone can be bought or threatened." "Then we use that against him," Kitchi said. "I will take 10 men to the rocks east of 3 sentinels. Nasha, you take 5 to the west. Sam, you, and 3 others position south. Aida approaches from the north as Drake expects. When she gives the signal, we move." "What signal?" Sam asked. Aida reached into a pouch at her waist and pulled out a small mirror, the kind women used for grooming. "When I see Rose is safe, I will catch the sun with this. 3 flashes. That is when we move." They refined the plan for another hour. Who would go where? What weapons to bring? How to approach without being seen? It was not perfect. There were a dozen ways it could go wrong, but it was the best they had. As the meeting broke up, people dispersing to prepare, Sam found himself alone with Aida. "This is my fault," he said quietly. "If I had not gone to Prescott, if I had been here, then they might have taken you both, or killed you trying." Aida moved closer, her hand finding his. Drake was always going to escalate. This is not your fault, it is his. I should have protected her better. You protected her by giving her a home, by teaching her to be strong and smart. That protection will save her life today. Aida squeezed his hand. Trust in what you have taught her. Trust in what we are about to do. And most of all, trust that Rose is tougher than Drake realizes. Sam wanted to believe her, needed to believe her. He turned his hand over, gripping Aida's fingers. If something happens to me today, if Drake, nothing will happen to you. But if it does, promise me you will take care of Rose, raise her, give her the life I wanted for her. Aida's eyes shone in the lamplight, bright with unshed tears. I promise. But you are going to be there to raise her yourself. We are going to win this, Sam, all of us together. She leaned forward and kissed his forehead, a gesture that was both tender and fierce. Now go, get your weapons. Say a prayer if you believe in such things, and prepare to get your daughter back. They moved out in the deep darkness before dawn, traveling in small groups to avoid detection. Sam rode with Kitchie and 2 others, heading south of 3 sentinels. They left the horses a mile out and approached on foot, moving with the careful silence of hunters. The rocks they chose for cover were good, high enough to see the valley below, close enough to intervene quickly, far enough that casual observation would not reveal them. Sam settled into position and waited. The sky slowly lightened from black to deep blue to pale gold. The desert came alive with morning sounds, birds, insects, the whisper of wind through dry grass. And still they waited. At 10 o'clock movement, Luther Kane and 6 men rode into the valley, taking positions around 3 sentinels. They had rifles, they looked ready for trouble, but they did not have Rose. Sam's heart sank. Tarak had been right. Drake was too smart to bring his only leverage to the exchange. Then at 11:30 another group arrived, 3 men on horseback, and tied to the saddle of the middle horse a small figure, Rose. Even from this distance Sam could see her, alive, moving. She looked unharmed, though her hands were bound and there was a gag in her mouth. Rage and relief warred in Sam's chest. The men positioned themselves near the largest of the 3 sentinel cacti. Luther Kane called out, his voice carrying in the still air. "Miss Redstone, we are here. Come on out." Nothing happened for a long moment. Then, from the north, a single rider appeared. Aida rode slowly, deliberately, her posture straight, despite the danger. She held the land deed in one hand, raised so they could see it. In her other hand, hidden against her saddle, was the mirror. Sam watched every movement, every detail. His rifle was ready, his hands were steady. He had been a soldier once. He remembered how to kill. Luther dismounted as Aida approached, walking out to meet her halfway between the rocks. His men stayed, mounted rifles across their laps. The men holding Rose remained near the cactus. "Smart of you to come alone," Luther called out when Aida was close enough. "Where is Vernon Drake? I thought he would want to see his victory personally." "Mr. Drake does not dirty his hands with field work. That is what he pays me for." Luther extended his hand. "The deed, if you please." "Rose first. Bring her here where I can see she is unharmed." Luther hesitated, then gestured to his men. They untied Rose from the horse and led her forward, the girl stumbling slightly on legs that had been bound too long. Sam could see tears on his daughter's face, but she was not crying now. She looked scared, but controlled. Just as Chenoa had predicted, she was holding herself together. Aida looked at Rose, then at Luther. "Remove the gag and the ropes. Let her walk to me. Then you get your deed." That was not the agreement. "It is now, or I burn this paper right here and you explain to Drake how you failed him." For a moment Sam thought Luther would refuse. Then the man shrugged and nodded to his men. They cut the ropes, binding Rose's hands, and removed the gag. Rose immediately ran toward Aida, and that was when Aida flashed the mirror. Once, twice, 3 times, the signal. Sam stood from his position, rifle raised. All around the valley, Apache warriors rose from hiding. They had Drake's men surrounded, outnumbered 2-1. "Drop your weapons," Kitchie shouted in English, his voice carrying authority. Luther's hand went to his pistol, then froze as he realized the situation. He was covered by a dozen rifles. His men were similarly trapped. For a heartbeat, nobody moved. Then Luther made his choice. His hand dropped away from his gun. He raised both hands slowly. "Smart man," Aida said. She had already pulled Rose behind her, shielding the child with her body. Kitchie and his men moved in quickly, disarming Luther and his crew. Sam vaulted down from the rocks, running toward Rose. He swept his daughter up in his arms, holding her so tight she gasped. "Daddy, I have got you, sweetheart, I have got you. You are safe now." Rose buried her face in his shoulder and finally let herself cry. Great racking sobs that shook her small frame. Sam carried her away from the confrontation, away from the armed men, to where Chenoa was waiting with water and blankets. The old healer took over with gentle efficiency, checking Rose for injuries, giving her water, wrapping her in warmth. Sam knelt beside them, one hand on his daughter's shoulder, grounding himself in her presence. She was alive. She was safe. Nothing else mattered. Behind him, he heard Aieta's voice, cold and precise. "Luther Kane, you are guilty of kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Where is Vernon Drake? I am not saying nothing without a lawyer. You do not need a lawyer. You need a priest. Because when I am done with you, you will need to make peace with whatever God you believe in." But before Aieta could continue, the sound of more horses approaching made everyone turn. Sheriff Hayes rode into the valley with 5 deputies, their badges gleaming in the noon sun. Behind them, in handcuffs, rode Vernon Drake himself. The merchant looked diminished somehow. His expensive clothes rumpled his face red with anger and fear. Hayes dismounted, taking in the scene with sharp eyes. "Looks like I am just in time. Or maybe a bit late." He walked to where Aieta stood. "Miss Redstone, I got your message. Took me a while to put all the pieces together, but I got there." "What message? I sent no message." Hayes smiled slightly. "No, but Father O'Malley did. After Mr. Fletcher and his friend visited last night, the good father came to see me, told me everything. About Miguel's suspicions, about Drake's threats, about Luther Kane asking questions at the church." He gestured to Drake. "I went to have a conversation with Mr. Drake about all this. Found some interesting documents in his office, contracts with Luther here, plans for developing Ash Mesa, and a ledger showing payments to your uncle, Miss Redstone, payments made just before someone tried to hang you." Drake's face went even redder. "Those are private documents. You had no right." "I had a warrant, signed by Judge Morrison, who I should mention is not one of the officials you have bought." Hayes turned to his deputies. "Take Luther and his men into custody. Kidnapping, attempted murder, conspiracy, add it to the charges against Mr. Drake." As the deputies moved to arrest Luther's crew, Drake found his voice again. "You cannot prove anything. Those documents could mean anything. They mean you have been planning to steal land that does not belong to you. They mean you paid someone to commit murder. They mean you ordered the kidnapping of a child." Hayes' voice was hard. "I can prove all of it, Drake, and I will." Aieta stepped forward, the land deed still in her hand. "Sheriff, I have one more piece of evidence for you, my grandfather's final letter. He suspected Drake of wanting to kill him for this land. 3 days after writing it, he was dead." She handed over the letter Father O'Malley had given Sam. Hayes read it carefully, his expression darkening. "We will be exhuming your grandfather's body, Miss Redstone. If there is poison, we will find it." Drake's face went from red to pale. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. "Take him away," Hayes said to his deputies. "And someone ride to the territorial capital. We are going to need a prosecutor for this one." As Drake was led away in handcuffs, still sputtering protests, Aieta turned to Sam. He was still kneeling beside Rose, who had stopped crying but clung to him like he might disappear. "Is she all right?" "Scared, tired, but not hurt." Sam looked up at Aieta, seeing the exhaustion in her face, the stress of the last day carved into her features. "You saved her, you and everyone here. I will never be able to repay that." "You already have, 100 times over." Aida knelt beside them, her hand gentle on Rose's head. "Hello, brave girl. You did so well. Your father is very proud of you." Rose turned her tear-stained face toward Aida. "I knew you would come. I knew Daddy and you would save me." "Of course we would. You are family." The word hung in the air. Family. Not employer and employee. Not landowner and worker. Family. Sam met Aida's eyes over his daughter's head and saw the same thought reflected there. Somewhere in the last weeks, they had become more than business partners, more than allies. They had become something that did not have a simple name yet. But it was real, and it was strong, and it had just survived its first real test. Sheriff Hayes approached his expression respectful. "Miss Redstone, I will need statements from everyone. This is going to be a significant case. The territorial governor will probably want to be involved." "Of course, whatever you need." "And Mr. Fletcher, your daughter will need to testify about what happened. Are you comfortable with that?" Sam looked down at Rose, who had stopped shaking and was listening with the serious attention children give to adult conversations. "Rose, can you tell the sheriff what happened? What those men did?" Rose nodded slowly. "They grabbed me when the barn was burning. Mr. Luther said if I screamed they would hurt Daddy, so I did not scream. They tied me up and took me to a house. They did not hurt me, but I was scared." Her voice was small but steady. "Then this morning they brought me here and said I had to be quiet or they would hurt Miss Aida. But I knew you would come. I knew it." Hayes wrote this down in a small notebook. "You are a very brave young lady. Your testimony will help put these men in prison for a long time." "Good. They are mean." Despite everything, Sam found himself smiling. His daughter practical to the end. The ride back to Ash Mesa was quiet. Rose fell asleep in Sam's arms, exhausted by fear and relief. Aida rode beside them, and behind came the warriors who had risked themselves to save a child who was not Apache for a cause that was not purely their own. That was the real victory, Sam thought. Not just defeating Drake, but proving that people of different backgrounds could stand together, could fight for each other, could become family. As they crested the rise overlooking the settlement, Sam saw people waiting. The entire community had turned out watching for their return. When they saw Rose safe in Sam's arms, a cheer went up. Not a war cry or a victory shout, but something warmer, the sound of relief and joy. Chenoa took Rose from Sam's arms, clucking over the girl like a mother hen, carrying her toward the healer's lodge to be properly checked and cared for. Other women followed, bringing food and blankets and comfort. Sam stood in the center of the settlement, suddenly aware of how exhausted he was. He had not slept in nearly 2 days, had spent hours in fear so intense it felt like drowning. His legs felt unsteady. Aida was beside him in an instant, her arm around his waist, supporting him. "Come, you need rest." "I need to make sure Rose is being cared for by every grandmother in the settlement. She will be spoiled beyond reason for the next week. You need sleep before you fall down." She guided him to his house, helped him inside. Sam wanted to protest, to stay awake, to keep watch, but his body had other ideas. He made it as far as his bed before unconsciousness claimed him. He slept through the afternoon and into the evening. When he woke, the house was dark, except for a lamp burning low on the table. And sitting in the chair beside his bed, her eyes closed in sleep, was Aida. She had stayed, watching over him as he had watched over her in that cabin during the blizzard. The symmetry of it struck him. Sam lay there for a long moment just looking at her, at the strength in her face even in sleep, at the way her hand rested on the arm of the chair, relaxed but ready, at the slight smile that curved her lips as if her dreams were pleasant. He thought about the journey that had brought them here, a blizzard, a rope, a moment of choice to help someone who needed it. And from that single moment, everything had changed. "You are staring." Aida's eyes opened amusement in their dark depths. "Sorry, I did not mean to wake you." I was not deeply asleep, just resting my eyes. She stretched, wincing slightly. "How do you feel?" "Better. Tired still, but better." He sat up slowly. "Rose is asleep in Chenoa's lodge. The old woman insisted, said you both needed a night of peace. Rose will be back in the morning, probably carrying half the settlement's breakfast offerings." Sam smiled at that image. "Thank you for everything, for saving her, for planning the rescue, for—" He gestured vaguely, unable to find words for the depth of what he felt. "You gave me a second chance. Now I return it. I do not think it works that way." "No." Aida leaned forward, her elbows on her knees. "Then how does it work, Sam Fletcher?" He thought about that, about debt and gratitude and the bonds that form between people who have faced death together. "I think maybe we stop keeping score. We just are there for each other, whatever comes." "I like that idea." They sat in comfortable silence. Then Aida spoke again, her voice softer. "Sheriff Hayes thinks Drake will go to prison for a long time, 20 years, maybe more. The territorial governor is very interested in the case. Apparently Drake has been suspected of corruption for years, but no one could prove it. Now they can. And your uncle, the one who tried to kill you, also being investigated. The payments Drake made to him are well documented. He will face justice too." She smiled, but it was tinged with sadness. "I never wanted to destroy my family, but I will not let them destroy what my grandfather built either. You are doing the right thing. Am I? Sometimes it feels like I am just choosing between bad options." Sam reached out his hand, covering hers. "You are choosing justice, truth, the law. That is never the wrong choice, even when it is hard." Aida turned her hand over their fingers, interlacing naturally. "Stay, Sam, not just for now, but for always. Help me build this place into what it can be, what it should be. I am not going anywhere. This is home now. I mean as more than just ranch supervisor." She met his eyes directly. "I mean as my partner. In everything." Sam's heart beat faster. He thought about Margaret, about the love he had lost, about the guilt he had carried, wondering if it was wrong to feel something for someone else. But looking at Aida, now seeing the hope and vulnerability in her face, he knew Margaret would have wanted him to live, to love, to be happy. "I would be honored." The smile that broke across Aida's face was like sunrise. She leaned forward and kissed him, soft and sweet and full of promise. When they parted, both were smiling. "We should probably tell Rose," Sam said, "before the whole settlement figures it out and tells her first." Aida laughed. "I think the whole settlement already knows. Chenoa told me 2 weeks ago it was only a matter of time." She told me the same thing. They laughed together, the sound warm and genuine. Outside, the settlement was settling into night. Fires were banked. Children were tucked into bed. Guards took up their positions, alert, but no longer expecting attack. Vernon Drake was in custody. The land was safe. Rose was home. And Sam Fletcher, who had started this journey as a poor blacksmith trying to keep his daughter fed, had found something he never expected. He had found home. He had found purpose. And he had found love. 6 months passed like water, finding its course natural and inevitable. Spring gave way to summer, to the first cool hints of autumn. Ash Mesa changed day by day, growing from a settlement into something more permanent, something that looked like it might last. The trial of Vernon Drake became territorial news. The governor himself attended, making clear that corruption would not be tolerated in Arizona territory. Drake was convicted on 14 counts ranging from conspiracy to murder to attempted kidnapping. The judge gave him 25 years in the territorial prison. Luther Kane got 15 years. Aida's uncle, faced with the evidence of his betrayal, pleaded guilty to attempted murder and received 10 years. The entire network of corruption Drake had built crumbled, taking down 2 town councilmen and a deputy marshal. Sheriff Hayes became something of a hero for bringing them all to justice. He visited Ash Mesa regularly, becoming a friend to the community. But it was the changes in the settlement itself that mattered most to Sam. They built a proper schoolhouse, a building large enough for 20 children with real desks and a blackboard. Rose, now 8 years old, was one of the older students. She helped teach the younger ones her Apache, improving daily until she moved between languages as easily as breathing. The ranch expanded. With Drake's threat removed, more people came. Families who had heard of a place where different peoples lived together in peace. By autumn, the population had grown to 150. Apache still formed the majority, but there were Mexican families now, and white families, and even a group of freed slaves from Texas who had nowhere else to go. Ash Mesa was becoming what Miguel Redstone had dreamed of, a true community where skin color mattered less than character. Sam and Aida were married in September in a ceremony that blended traditions. Tarak, who had grudgingly come to respect Sam, performed the Apache rites under 3 sentinels. The old warrior who had once doubted him now spoke the blessing with tears in his eyes, calling Sam brother in Apache. Father O'Malley, who had traveled from Prescott for the occasion, blessed the union in the Catholic tradition. Rose stood between them, holding their hands, her smile bright enough to rival the sun. The entire settlement celebrated for 3 days. There was dancing and singing, food and laughter. People who had once viewed each other with suspicion now shared meals and stories. Children who had played together for months now had the wedding as proof that different worlds could not just coexist, but merge into something new. On their wedding night, Sam and Aida stood together on the porch of their house, the larger one that had been built to accommodate a growing family. They watched the settlement prepare for sleep, fires glowing warm against the darkness. "I wonder if he sees this from wherever he is," Aida said softly. "If he knows his dream came true, I think he would be amazed. You have exceeded his dreams." "We have. This was not me alone, Sam. This was all of us. Kitchie and Chenoa and Tarak, Jack Morrison and his family, Sheriff Hayes keeping the law honest, and you." She turned to face him. "Especially you, the man who saved my life without knowing who I was." Sam pulled her close, feeling the warmth of her against him. "I just did what any decent person would do." "No, you did what few people would do. You saw someone who needed help and you helped. No questions, no conditions, just kindness." She rested her head against his chest. That kindness changed everything. They stood like that for a while, comfortable in the silence. Then Sam felt Aida shift her hand, moving to rest on her stomach. "There is something I need to tell you." He pulled back slightly to look at her face, seeing nervousness there mixed with joy. "What is it?" "I am pregnant. About 2 months along. Chenoa confirmed it yesterday." For a moment Sam could not process the words. Then they hit him like a physical force. A child, their child, growing inside the woman he loved. Are you happy about this?" Aida asked, uncertainty creeping into her voice. Sam swept her up in his arms, spinning her once before setting her down gently, suddenly worried about jarring the baby. "Happy I am. I do not have words for what I am." They both laughed, the sound carrying across the quiet settlement. Somewhere a baby cried briefly, then settled. A dog barked once and was silent, the normal sounds of a community at peace. "Rose is going to be so excited," Sam said. "She has been asking about brothers or sisters since the wedding." "I know. She asked me last week if we were going to give her a sibling. I did not know what to tell her. Now we can tell her the truth." They went inside where Rose was supposedly asleep but was actually reading by candlelight, a habit she had developed recently. "Rose Fletcher, you are supposed to be sleeping." The girl looked up completely unrepentant. "I was almost done with the chapter, and I heard you laughing outside." "What is funny?" Sam and Aida exchanged glances. They had planned to wait to tell her in the morning, but looking at her hopeful face, they could not wait. "We have some news," Aida said, sitting on the edge of Rose's bed. "You are going to be a big sister." Rose's eyes went wide. Then she squealed with delight, launching herself at Aida for a hug. "Really, truly, when?" "Next spring, April, Chenoa thinks. That is so long I have to wait until April, but Rose was smiling even as she complained. Can I help take care of the baby? Can I teach it things? Will it be a boy or a girl? Yes, yes, and we will find out when it arrives, Sam said, laughing. Now bed. For real this time. The baby is not coming tonight. Rose settled back into her blankets, still grinning. This is the best day ever. Well, second best. The best was when you and Mother Aita got married. She had started calling Aita Mother Aita a month after the wedding, the title rolling off her tongue as if it had always been there. Aita had cried the first time, gathering Rose into a hug that lasted minutes. Now, watching his daughter drift off to sleep with a smile on her face, watching his wife's hand rest protectively on her barely swollen belly, Sam felt a peace he had not known since before Margaret died. The winter was mild that year, with only one serious snowstorm. Sam stood in the doorway of the schoolhouse during that storm, watching snow fall on the desert, remembering another storm that had changed his life. Thinking deep thoughts. He turned to find Kitchi standing behind him. The Apache warrior had become a true friend over the months, someone Sam trusted absolutely. Just remembering the blizzard, the one that brought Aita into my life. Kitchi nodded, understanding. The spirits work in strange ways. They brought you together so you could build this. He gestured at the settlement beyond the schoolhouse, a place where my children can grow up without war, where they can learn from different peoples without fear. This is what our ancestors dreamed of. I am just a blacksmith who happened to be in the right place. You are more than that. You are proof that one person's choice to be kind can change the world. Inside the schoolhouse, children laughed as their teacher told a story in Apache, translating bits into English for those still learning. Rose sat among them, helping a younger child with their letters. She will make a good teacher someday, Kitchi observed. Like her father, she sees people, not categories. I hope so. That is all I can give her, the ability to see clearly and choose kindly. They stood in companionable silence, watching the snow fall. It would melt by morning, leaving the desert scrubbed clean and ready for spring. Aita's pregnancy progressed smoothly. By March, she was large and uncomfortable, but still insisting on working. Sam finally put his foot down when he found her trying to help repair a fence. You are 8 months pregnant. You are not lifting anything heavier than a book. I am pregnant, not helpless. I know that. Everyone knows that. But Chenoa will have both our heads if anything happens to you or the baby, so please, for my peace of mind, let other people do the heavy work. Aita grumbled, but agreed. She spent the last month of her pregnancy supervising rather than directing the work while sitting in the shade. The baby came on a warm April morning, arriving with the sunrise. Sam paced outside Chenoa's lodge while women moved in and out, bringing water and cloths and speaking in low voices. Rose sat beside him, holding his hand. Babies take time, Daddy. Chenoa said so. We just have to be patient. I know, sweetheart, but patience is hard when someone you love is in pain. Finally, after what felt like hours, but was probably only 2, Chenoa emerged from the lodge. You have a son, strong and healthy, and Aita is well, tired but well. Sam did not remember crossing the distance to the lodge entrance. Suddenly he was just there, stepping inside, seeing Aita propped up on blankets, her face exhausted, but radiant, holding a bundle wrapped in soft cloth. Come meet your son. Sam knelt beside her, looking down at the tiny face. The baby had Aita's dark hair and skin tone. His eyes, when they opened briefly, were light, possibly blue like Sam's. He was perfect. What should we name him? Sam asked, unable to look away from his son. I thought, Miguel Samuel, for my grandfather and for you, if you approve. Sam felt tears prick his eyes. Miguel, the man whose dream had made all this possible. Samuel, his own name, passed to his son. It is perfect. Rose crowded in, wanting to see her brother. He is so small. Can I hold him? With Aita's help, Rose carefully took the baby, her face a study in concentration as she supported his head just as Chenoa had taught her. "Hello, Miguel Samuel. I am your big sister Rose. I am going to teach you everything." The baby yawned, completely unconcerned with his sister's grand plans. They sat like that for a long time, a family complete. Outside the settlement went about its business. Cattle lowed, horses whinnied, children played. Work continued, but in that small lodge for that perfect moment, time seemed to stop. The past fell away, the future had not yet arrived. There was only now, only this family, only this child who represented the hope that different worlds could become one. 5 years passed. Miguel Samuel Fletcher Redstone grew into a curious, energetic boy who spoke Apache and English with equal fluency. He had his mother's fearlessness and his father's steady nature. Rose doted on him, teaching him to read before he turned 4. Ash Mesa continued to grow. The population reached 300. They built a proper town square with a general store, a blacksmith shop that Sam ran on weekends, and a small church that doubled as a meeting hall. The silver remained untouched beneath 3 sentinels, just as Miguel had wished. The land itself was wealth enough. The territorial government officially recognized Ash Mesa as a town in 1889. They elected Aita as the first mayor, a position she accepted with the understanding that she would continue managing the ranch as well. Sam was content to work in the background, helping where needed, raising his children, loving his wife. He had no need for titles or recognition. He had everything that mattered. On a warm autumn evening in 1890, the entire town gathered to celebrate the 10th anniversary of Ash Mesa's founding. They set up tables in the square, filled them with food, and invited everyone to share. Sheriff Hayes, now retired, made the journey from Prescott for the occasion. Father O'Malley came as well, older, but still sharp. Even the territorial governor sent a representative, along with an official letter recognizing Ash Mesa as a model community. Sam stood with Aita watching the celebration. Miguel Samuel played with other children, his laughter carrying on the warm air. Rose, now 13, was helping serve food, moving between groups with easy grace. "Do you remember the blizzard?" Aita asked, echoing the question she had asked on their wedding night. "Every day. It was the storm that brought me to you." "No, it was your choice to help a stranger that brought you to me. The storm was just weather. Your kindness was what mattered." Chenoa approached, now in her 80s, but still sharp-eyed and energetic. "Have you told him yet?" Aita smiled. "Told me what?" Sam asked. "That I am pregnant again, 3 months along this time." Sam laughed, loud and joyful, sweeping Aita into his arms. "How long were you planning to keep that a secret?" "Until tonight. I wanted to tell you at the celebration, make it part of the joy." Around them, the celebration continued. People from different backgrounds, different cultures, different lives, all gathered together in peace, sharing food, sharing stories, building something that would outlast them all. Kitchi raised a cup, calling for attention, a toast to Aita and Sam, to their family, to Ash Mesa, to the dream that became real because good people chose to build instead of destroy. Everyone raised their cups, their voices joining in agreement. Jack Morrison, who had become the settlement's head of security, raised his cup beside Kitchi. Sam looked at his wife, at his children, at the community around them. He thought about the journey that had brought him here, the loss that had nearly destroyed him, the storm that had given him a second chance, the choice to help a stranger without asking for anything in return. From that simple act of kindness, all of this had grown. Later that night, after the celebration had wound down and the children were asleep, Sam and Aita walked to 3 sentinels. They stood in the shadow of the ancient cacti, looking up at stars that had witnessed everything. "I think about him sometimes," Aita said quietly. "My grandfather. I wonder if he can see this, if he knows what his dream became. I think he knows, and I think he is proud beyond measure." "What about you, Sam? Are you happy, truly happy?" Sam turned to look at her, this fierce woman who had survived betrayal and violence and loss, who had built something beautiful from the ashes of tragedy. "I have a wife I love, children who are healthy and happy, a community that treats me like family, work that matters, purpose, home." He pulled her close. "I have everything I never knew I needed." They stood together under the stars, two people who had found each other in a blizzard and built a life worth living. Around them, Ash Mesa slept peacefully, secure, in the knowledge that tomorrow would come, and with it, new challenges and new triumphs. But that was tomorrow. Tonight there was only this, only love, only hope, only the legacy they had built together, one act of kindness at a time. The Silver Eagle bracelet hung in Sam's office, now a reminder of where it all began. Sometimes, when the light hit it just right, it seemed to shine brighter, as if acknowledging the promise it represented. Kindness does not need to be repaid. It finds its way back on its own, like the wind crossing the plains, far-reaching but never lost. And in a small settlement in the Arizona Territory, that kindness had built an empire, not of land or wealth, but of trust and hope, and the radical belief that all people could choose to see each other clearly and treat each other well. That was the real treasure of Ash Mesa, not the silver buried beneath the ground, but the humanity living on top of it. And it all began with a man who saved a life without asking who needed saving. Years later, travelers passing through would ask about the silver bracelet hanging in the mayor's office, and the people of Ash Mesa would smile and say, "That is where our story began, with a storm, a stranger, and a choice to be kind."